My child, before you close your eyes tonight, I need you to hear something. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Tonight, while the house is quiet and your thoughts are loud. I know you feel forgotten. I have known it for a while now. I have watched you lie awake replaying the silence, wondering if I even remember your name. You do not say it out loud to anyone. You are too proud for that, or too tired, or too afraid of what saying it might confirm. But I hear it anyway. I hear the version of the prayer you never finished, because you were not sure it mattered. Stay with me for the next few minutes. Do not scroll away the way you scrolled away from 100 other things today. This is not one of those things. Something in you paused before you found this message. That pause was not random. That pause was me slowing down, your hand long enough for these words to reach you before your eyes close tonight. You have been carrying a quiet ache that has no name you are willing to say out loud. It sounds like this. Does anyone actually remember me? Does anyone notice when I go quiet? Am I just background noise in everyone else's story? I want to answer that question plainly. Yes. I remember you. I have never once stopped remembering you. But I know that answer alone will not be enough tonight, because you have heard comforting words before and still gone to bed feeling hollow. So let me show you why this feeling of being forgotten arrived in the first place, and why it was never true even in the moments it felt most true. Feeling forgotten rarely comes from nothing. It comes from a season where the answers were slow. It comes from prayers that seem to disappear into silence. It comes from watching other people receive what you are still waiting for. You have counted the days. You have counted the years. You have looked at your life and wondered why the timeline looks nothing like what you imagined it would look like by now. And in that gap between what you hoped for and what has actually arrived, a lie moved in quietly. The lie whispered that delay means rejection. It whispered that silence means absence. It whispered that if I truly saw you, things would already look different. That lie has been living rent-free in your mind for longer than you realize. Tonight I want to evict it. Type yes, Father, in the comments right now. If you are ready to stop believing that lie about yourself. Not because I need the words typed out, but because declaring something out loud with your own hands changes something in you. It moves truth from a feeling into a decision. Let me tell you about a woman named Adiz. She lived in a small apartment on the edge of Manchester, England, and for 3 winters in a row, she woke up on Christmas morning completely alone. Her family had scattered. Some had passed. Some had simply stopped calling. She would make a small breakfast, sit by the window, and quietly ask me if I had forgotten her the way everyone else seemed to have. She was not dramatic about it. She did not cry out loud. She simply existed inside a quiet, private grief that nobody else could see. On the 3rd winter, something shifted. She had read a message very much like this one the night before, and something in her decided to write a letter, not to a person, but to me. She wrote 3 pages by hand, telling me everything she had never said out loud. 11 days later, a woman from her old church, someone she had not spoken to in nearly a decade, knocked on her door holding a small gift and an apology for losing touch. That single knock became a friendship that became a weekly dinner that became a whole new chapter of belonging. 11 days, my child. I am not telling you this so you count down 11 days on a calendar and expect the exact same knock. I am telling you this so you understand something about how I work. I do not forget the one sitting alone by a window on a morning that feels unbearable. Hit the like button right now, not for me, but as your own declaration that you believe. I still move like this, even now, even for you. Here is something I need you to understand about the nature of feeling forgotten. It almost always shows up loudest in seasons of waiting, and waiting is not the same thing as absence. Think about a seed planted in the ground. For weeks, sometimes months, nothing visible happens. The soil looks the same. The surface looks empty. Anyone watching from above would assume nothing was occurring at all. But underneath that silent surface, the seed is doing the most important work of its entire existence. Roots are forming. Structure is being built. Strength is being gathered for a moment that has not arrived yet, but is absolutely coming. You are the seed, my child. And what feels like forgotten ground is actually a season of root building, that you cannot see from where you are standing. I did not abandon Adiz during those 3 winters. I was preparing the exact right knock at the exact right door for the exact right season of her healing. And I have not abandoned you either. Comment 222 right now if you receive that truth for your own life tonight. Let me tell you about Proverbs chapter 31. It is not just a description of a virtuous woman. Read further and you will find a picture of someone who is not afraid of what is coming because she has trusted something steady through seasons that looked uncertain. She laughs at the days to come. Not because her circumstances were guaranteed to be easy, but because her trust had been built on something deeper than circumstance. That kind of laughter, that kind of confidence in the face of an unclear future, is available to you tonight. It is not reserved for people whose lives look finished and resolved. It is available to you in the exact middle of your unresolved story. I want to pause here and speak honestly about something practical. If this message has already touched something in you tonight, I want to invite you to consider sowing a seed of faith through the super thanks button below this video. This is never a transaction. There is nothing you could give me that I need. But some of my children have found that the simple act of giving becomes a physical declaration that says, what I am receiving tonight is worth more than what is in my hand. Someone gave last month after a message like this one and told us that within days, a relationship she thought was permanently broken began quietly repairing itself. I am not promising you a formula. I am reminding you that the kingdom multiplies what is sown in faith, and your obedience tonight, in whatever form it takes, becomes part of the next chapter 1 writing in your life. Now let me tell you about a man named Callum. He lived just outside Glasgow, and for 4 years he ran a small business that seemed to be dying a slow, painful death no matter what he tried. He watched his savings disappear. He watched his confidence erode. He watched people he trusted quietly stop believing in what he was building, until finally, he stopped believing in it too. He remembers the exact night he sat in his car outside his shuttered storefront and asked me directly if I had simply forgotten what he had poured his whole life into. He did not feel angry. He felt hollow, the way a person feels when hope has been worn down to almost nothing. He kept showing up anyway. Not because he felt strong, but because something in him refused to fully let go. 19 days after that night in the car, a phone call came from a company he had contacted over a year earlier and completely given up on. That single phone call became a contract that became the turning point of his entire business. 19 days, my child, after 4 years of what felt like complete forgotten silence. I did not forget Callum in his car that night. I was moving pieces behind the scenes that his eyes could not yet see. And I am moving pieces behind the scenes of your life right now, in ways your eyes cannot yet see either. Type yes, Father, again if you believe. I am working in the parts of your life that currently look the most stuck. Let us talk honestly about why waiting feels so much like forgetting. Your mind is built to notice absence quickly and presence slowly. When something is missing, you feel it immediately, sharply, painfully. When something is quietly being built, you often do not notice it until it is finished. This is why a delayed answer can feel like rejection even when it is actually preparation. Your nervous system is wired to interpret silence as danger, because for most of human history, silence often did mean danger. But I am not a predator waiting to abandon you in the wilderness. I am a father watching over every single detail of your story, including the details you cannot yet see the purpose of. Isaiah chapter 49 holds a promise that answers your exact fear tonight. Can a mother forget the baby at her breast, and have no compassion on the child she has borne? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. Read that again slowly. Even the most powerful, most instinctive human bond, a mother and her newborn child, is used here only as the lower comparison. My memory of you runs deeper than that. I have your name written on the palms of my hands. Not scribbled somewhere in a forgotten file. Written on my own hands, where I cannot look at my own hands without seeing you. Comment 222 if you are ready to receive that image and let it settle into the tired places inside you tonight. Let me tell you now about Priya. She lived in a quiet suburb outside Toronto, and after a difficult diagnosis that changed nearly everything about her daily life. She spent almost 2 years feeling completely invisible to the people around her, and worse, invisible to me. She would pray in short, exhausted sentences because that was all the energy she had. She stopped expecting big miracles. She simply hoped to get through each individual day, without collapsing under the weight of her own body and her own fear. She told me one night, very plainly, that she felt like I had simply moved on to more important people. That confession was honest, and honesty like that never offends me. It only draws me closer. 33 days after that honest, exhausted prayer, a specialist she had been trying to see for over a year had an unexpected cancellation. And Priya was called in the same week. That appointment changed the entire direction of her treatment and her health. 33 days, my child, after 2 years of feeling completely forgotten. I want you to notice something in every one of these stories. The waiting was real. The pain during the waiting was real. I never once rushed in to erase the difficulty before its time. But the forgetting was never real, not even for a single day. Hit the like button again if you needed to hear that the waiting is real but the forgetting never was. Now I want to speak to something you have not said out loud to anyone, something that has been sitting quietly underneath everything else tonight. You wonder sometimes if you have simply asked too much. If you have prayed too long about the same thing. If your need has finally exhausted my patience. Hear me clearly, my child. You have never once exhausted me. There is no limit to how many times you can bring me the same ache. There is no expiration date on how long I am willing to listen to the same prayer. Luke chapter 18 tells the story of a widow who kept coming back to an unjust judge, over and over, refusing to stop asking for justice. Until finally the judge gave in simply because of her persistence. And the point of that story is not that I am reluctant like that judge. The point is that if even an unjust judge eventually responds to persistent asking, how much more will a loving father respond to his own child? I am not tired of your asking. I am moved by it every single time. Type Jesus guide my every step if you want that persistence to keep carrying you even on the nights it feels pointless. Let me tell you about a young man named Theodore. He lived outside Bucharest, and after his father passed away suddenly, he carried a grief so heavy that he stopped speaking to almost everyone in his life, including me. For nearly a year, his prayers were mostly silence. Not because he had nothing to say, but because saying anything felt like it would break something, already barely holding together inside his chest. He assumed his silence meant our relationship had simply ended. But silence from you has never once meant absence from me. I sat with Theodore through every one of those quiet months. I was there on the nights he could not form a single sentence. I was there in the mornings he could barely get out of bed. Then one ordinary Tuesday, 7 days after he finally whispered one broken sentence to me in his car. An old friend of his father reached out completely unprompted, carrying a story about his father that Theodore had never heard before, a story that gave him a piece of peace he did not know he was missing. 7 days, my child, after nearly a year of silence. I do not need your eloquence. I do not need your perfect words. I only need your willingness to stay connected, even through a single whispered sentence in a parked car. Comment 222 if you have been silent for a long time and you are ready to whisper even one sentence to me tonight. I want to pause again, gently, and speak about something practical. If Theodore's story moved something in you, if you understand what it means to feel forgotten during a season of real grief, I want to invite you again to consider sowing a seed of faith, through the Super Thanks button. You never have to give anything. This is never about payment. But if your spirit is nudging you right now, that nudge is worth paying attention to. It has unlocked breakthroughs for so many, who were sitting exactly where you are sitting tonight, feeling exactly what you are feeling. Now let us talk about what is actually true underneath this feeling of being forgotten, because feelings, however real, are not always accurate reporters of reality. You have felt forgotten in the middle of a crowded room. You have felt forgotten while surrounded by people who love you in their own limited way. You have felt forgotten even in seasons where, objectively, things were going reasonably well on the surface. That tells you something important. Feeling forgotten is not always about your circumstances. Sometimes it is a wound from long ago, a moment where someone who should have shown up did not, and that early wound taught your heart to expect the same absence from everyone, including me. I am not like the people who left. I am not like the parent who was too distracted to notice you. I am not like the friend who disappeared when things got difficult. I am not like the promise that was broken. Hebrews chapter 13 tells you plainly that I will never leave you, nor forsake you. Not sometimes. Not on your good days. Never. Say it with me right now, out loud if you can. He will never leave me. He will never forsake me. Even when I cannot feel him, he has not gone anywhere. Let me tell you about Wilhelmina. She was an elderly woman living alone outside Vienna after her husband of 52 years passed away. Her children lived far away, busy with their own lives, and weeks would pass where the only voice she heard out loud was her own, echoing quietly through an apartment built for 2 people and now holding only 1. She told a friend once that, she believed I had already gathered everyone she loved and simply left her behind to finish out her days alone. That belief carried real weight, and I never dismissed the pain underneath it. 42 days after she wrote that fear down in a small journal she kept by her bed, a young couple moved into the apartment next door, and their small daughter, only 6 years old, began knocking on Wilhelmina's door nearly every afternoon just to talk. That small child became the center of Wilhelmina's days for years afterward, filling a silence that had felt unbearable. 42 days, my child, after a lifetime of believing she had been left behind. I do not always answer with what people expect. Sometimes the answer to profound loneliness is not dramatic. Sometimes it is small, warm, and unmistakably placed by a hand that never stopped paying attention. Type yes, Father, if you believe I can still place something small and warm into your loneliness tonight. I want to talk now about the specific hour you are in as you hear these words, whether it is late at night or early in the morning or somewhere in between. This hour was not random. This exact hour was chosen. You are tired tonight. You have been tired for a while, not just physically, but in the deeper places that sleep alone cannot reach. You have been carrying decisions and disappointments and questions that nobody around you fully understands. You have wondered privately whether anyone would even notice if you simply stopped trying to hold everything together. That is one of the loneliest thoughts a person can carry, and I want you to know tonight that I noticed every single time that thought crossed your mind. I noticed, and I stayed close, even when you could not feel me staying close. Feeling and reality are not always the same thing, and tonight I am asking you to trust the reality even when the feeling has not caught up yet. Comment 222 if you are ready to trust the reality of my presence, even on the nights the feeling has not arrived. Let me tell you about a man named Osric. He lived in a small coastal town near Cardiff, and after losing his job during a difficult economic season, he spent almost a year applying to position after position, hearing nothing back, watching his confidence and his savings shrink together. He described that season later as feeling completely erased, like the world had simply decided he no longer existed in any meaningful way. He kept applying anyway, some days out of hope, most days simply out of stubborn refusal to quit. 26 days after, he almost gave up entirely and stopped sending applications altogether. A former coworker he had not spoken to in 3 years reached out about an opening at a completely different company. One Osric had never even considered. That conversation led to the best position of his entire career. 26 days, my child, after almost a full year of silence that felt like erasure. I was not erasing Osric. I was redirecting him toward a door his own searching had never once considered. I want you to notice that in every single one of these stories, the turning point never came from the exact door the person was pounding on. It came from a door they were not even watching. That is often how I work. I am rarely found in the door you keep checking. I am usually already moving through the door you forgot to watch. Hit the like button once more, if you are ready to stop staring only at the door you expected and start trusting that, I may already be moving through another one. Now, my child, I need to speak to you about the enemy of your peace for a moment, because he has been working hard on this particular lie, the lie that you are forgotten. He cannot make me forget you. That is simply not something within his power. So instead, he works on your perception. He whispers during your quietest, most vulnerable hours that the silence you are experiencing is proof of absence rather than proof of preparation. He shows you everyone else's timeline moving forward while yours seems frozen. He counts your unanswered prayers out loud in your own mind, keeping a running tally designed to convince you that the count itself means something about how much I care. But a delayed answer has never once meant a denied answer. And an unanswered prayer from 6 months ago may be the exact prayer I am answering tonight, in ways you will not fully understand until you look back later. Type Jesus guide my every step if you are ready to stop counting delays as denials. Let me tell you about a young mother named Solveig. She lived outside Bergen, Norway, and after a difficult and isolating postpartum season, she felt an overwhelming sense that she had been forgotten by everyone, including me, at the exact moment she needed presence the most. She would sit awake during the middle of the night feeding her newborn, crying quietly so her husband would not wake and worry, wondering if anyone truly understood how alone she felt in that specific darkness. 15 nights into that season, during one of those quiet 3 a.m. feedings, she felt an unexplainable wave of peace settle over her, unconnected to anything that had changed externally. She described it later as the exact opposite of forgotten. She described it as the most seen she had ever felt in her entire life. Nothing about her circumstances shifted that night. The exhaustion was still there in the morning. But something inside her had shifted permanently, and that internal shift eventually reshaped how she carried every difficult night that followed. Sometimes, my child, the answer is not a changed circumstance. Sometimes the answer is a changed heart in the middle of an unchanged circumstance, and that kind of answer can be just as real, just as powerful, and just as unmistakably mine. Comment 222 if you would receive that kind of answer tonight, even if your circumstances stay exactly the same for now. I want to pause once more and speak honestly about something practical, because I do not want this movement in your heart tonight to simply evaporate by morning. If Solveig's story touched you, if you understand what it means to need presence more than a solved problem, I want to invite you again to consider sowing a seed of faith through the super thanks button below this video. This is never about obligation, and it is never a transaction. But if your spirit is stirring right now, that stirring is worth honoring. It becomes a physical declaration, a marker in time, that says tonight you chose to trust me with something tangible, not only with your feelings. Now let me tell you what I actually want you to carry to sleep with you tonight. I want you to understand that forgotten and quiet are not the same word, even though they can feel identical from where you are sitting. A parent watching a sleeping child from the doorway is quiet. They are not distant. They are not absent. They are simply present in a way that does not require noise to be real. I have been standing in the doorway of your life through every season that felt silent. I have not been pacing somewhere far away, uninterested in your story. I have been right there, quiet, watching, present, waiting for the moment you would turn and notice. Psalm 139 tells you that even before a word is on your tongue, I already know it completely. That is not the language of someone distracted. That is the language of someone who has never once looked away. Say it out loud right now if you can. He knows my words before I speak them. He has never looked away from me, not even once. Let me tell you about one more person before we close tonight, a man named Ezra who lived outside Denver. After his marriage ended in a way that left him blindsided and ashamed, he isolated himself almost completely for nearly 2 years, convinced that he had disqualified himself from ever being noticed by me again. He stopped going to church. He stopped praying in complete sentences. He assumed silence on my part was actually judgment, a kind of quiet punishment for choices he deeply regretted. 61 days after he finally, hesitantly, walked back into a small gathering of people who prayed together, someone in that room said something completely unrelated to his situation. That answered a private question he had been carrying silently for the entire 2 years. He wept in his car afterward, not from sadness, but from the shock of finally feeling found. 61 days, my child, after 2 years of believing he had disqualified himself from ever being seen again. There is no version of your story where you disqualify yourself from my attention. Shame convinces you otherwise, but shame has never once been an accurate narrator of how I see you. Type yes, Father, if you have believed, even quietly, that you disqualified yourself from being remembered. Let me tell you about a woman named Bettina one more time before we close, because her story ties together everything I have been showing you tonight. She lived outside Leipzig, Germany, running a small bakery that had been in her family for 3 generations. When new construction changed the flow of foot traffic on her street, her income slowly collapsed over the course of 18 months. She watched customers she had known for decades simply stop appearing, not because they stopped loving her bread, but because the path to her door had quietly changed without her permission. She prayed every morning, while kneading dough that had become harder and harder to justify making. She told me plainly one evening that she felt like an afterthought, a small forgotten shop on a street the world had rerouted around. 29 days after she almost signed papers to close the bakery permanently, a local food writer wandered down her street by accident, looking for a completely different address, and discovered her bakery instead. The article that writer published brought in more new customers in a single month than Bettina had seen in the previous year combined. 29 days, my child, after 18 months of feeling completely rerouted around. I did not forget Bettina's bakery. I redirected a stranger's steps toward a door she had almost closed forever. I want you to notice something about the timing in every single story I have told you tonight. None of these answers arrived on the exact day the pain began. They arrived after real waiting, real doubt, real nights of wondering if anything would ever change. I never once erased the waiting. But I never once abandoned the person inside it either. Type Jesus guide my every step if you believe. I am already redirecting steps toward your door, even tonight, even while you cannot see it happening yet. There is a reason I have shown you so many different people tonight, from so many different places, carrying so many different kinds of pain. I wanted you to see that feeling forgotten has no single shape. It shows up in grief and in loneliness and in financial fear and in shame and in exhaustion. But in every single case, the forgetting was never real, only the feeling of it. Romans chapter 8 asks a question I want you to sit with tonight. If I did not spare my own, but gave everything for you, how will I not also, along with that gift, give you everything else you need? That is not a rhetorical question meant to make you feel guilty for doubting. It is a genuine invitation to reason your way back to trust. If the greatest gift has already been given, the smaller gifts of presence, provision, and remembrance are not somehow harder for me to provide. They flow from the same love that gave everything in the first place. Say it out loud one more time if you can. If He gave me everything already, He has not stopped giving. He has not started forgetting. My child, here is what I want settled in your spirit before you close your eyes tonight. Every single delay in your story has been building something, not punishing you for something. Every quiet season has been forming roots you cannot see yet, but will lean on later. Every unanswered prayer is still alive, still being worked, still moving toward you even now. You are not forgotten. You have never been forgotten. Not during the loudest crowd, not during the quietest midnight, not during the longest wait, not during the darkest doubt. I have your name written where I cannot look away from it. I have counted every tear you thought no one saw. I have heard every prayer you were too tired to finish. None of it fell to the ground unheard. Subscribe to this channel right now, my child, and turn on the notification bell, not as a favor to me, but because there will be another night ahead of you, maybe sooner than you think, when you need to hear this exact reminder again, and I want to make sure it finds you. Share this message with one person right now, someone whose face came to mind the moment I started talking about feeling forgotten. You already know exactly who it is. Send it before you close this and move on to whatever comes next tonight. Comment 2221 final time, if you are going to sleep tonight believing something different than what you believed when you opened this message. My child, I love you in your waiting. I love you in your silence. I love you on the nights you feel most invisible and the mornings you feel most tired. I have never once looked away from you, not for a single second, not even in the moments it felt to you like I had. Close your eyes tonight knowing this. You are remembered. You are held. You are not forgotten, and you never were.